Hi, this is Patrea O'Donoghue from Brisbane, Australia, and I'm in Coach Class 2, and here is my top 10 Optimize Handbook that I've called Optimize Wisdom Distilled. I have a mnemonic for remembering my top 10, and that is Spartans complete with success following rigorous process with optimized thinking. So here are my top 10. The Spartan, the S for Spartan, that was me, a Sunday, the 29th of November 2020, and I am Spartan. Yay, Team Australia! So start with the end in mind, Covey. Number 2, top idea, is close the gap between who you're capable of being and who you're actually being. Big idea number 3 is what I can be. So a slight variation on Maslow's idea of what one can be, one must be. Big idea number 4 is step forward into growth, not back into safety. So yet another idea from Maslow. Big idea number 5 is finish what I start, looking at the open and closed loops. Big idea number 6 is the right why from Michelle Seeger. Big idea number 7 is protocol is primary. Big idea number 8 is win, what's important now, and some other wins. Big idea 9 is oscillate with the natural rhythms of our body and our life. Big idea number 10 is Nietzsche's there is no the way. And bonus idea number 11 is bring back the boon from Joseph Campbell. So here we are going through my top 10 in a little bit more detail. Not much, but a little. So start with the end in mind. So Covey's ideas. I played with this for a while and I was primarily going with be creative before reactive. And then I just think really the bigger picture is start with the end in mind, is really get much clearer on where we want to head in this journey. So this is my top 10. So start with the end in mind. And that, for the first part, really involves being creative before reactive. And I think what that really underpins is the whole idea of stepping in between stimulus and response. But in order to create the space between stimulus and response, there's a few practices that I think are really helpful when the mind is still relatively quiet upon waking, which is doing the meditation, capturing some of those creative goodness that came through from the sleep, and then moving on to the deep work. That said, I do like getting my exercise done primarily, but I sometimes get a little bit of the deep work done just after the meditation before I then go out to do my exercise and then come back ideally and do a proper deep work block, but at least capturing some ideas. So big idea number 2 is closing the gap between who we're capable of being and who we're actually being. For me, it starts a little bit with the science of regret in terms of looking at how the fact that we're really bad at forecasting how we're going to feel, in psychology what they call poor affective forecasting. We're really poor at forecasting how we're going to feel when we've done or failed to do something, and with our minds kind of constantly going to the what if this bad thing happens, it often stops us from being who we're capable of being. So by actually having constraints, it actually brings out the best. So one of the plus ones had a note around viewing limitations as liberating, not constraining. And so I think that whole idea that Brian spoke about in terms of the constraints of the game bring out the best, such as in tennis, the constraints of the court and the rules make it much more interesting to watch the players excel. And the third point within closing the gap would be the fastest way to close the gap is to stop doing what isn't working. There can be many of those things. So for me, that was a really great point to keep in mind, that remembering that the fastest way to change and to close the gap, therefore, is to stop what's not working. So moving on to big idea number 3, what I can be. So Maslow's what one can be, one must be. I just felt like I needed to personalize it. And so for me, the very first part of that is around the big 3 times 2. So keep asking the questions, especially around identity. For me, it was a really big plus. Who do I want to be? Who inspires me? And, what would be a quality, a person, an identity that actually really captures who I want to be. I think that's definitely a work in progress, but definitely something that I would like to continue to work towards. And the second part in that point was around the Carpe Diem journals. That's been a really big thing for me. Doing those daily reflections has been really positive for me in order to really have that regular reflection time on those things that are important. And so across the time I've been doing it, so my 200 plus days now, my reflections definitely come back to, they've evolved, and that's a great thing. And one of the things is, at one point I did toy with the idea of being an athlete, and I think I'm coming back to it. So having done Spartan has kind of made me realize I love training hard. And so being able to sort of embody and embrace that aspect, I think, is really good. So go athlete. The third part in what I can be is having and consulting a board of directors. So I really liked in my conversation with Brian when he actually talked about how he's going to be putting his board of directors in his office, on painted in his office, so that they're there. And so when he's in need of some inspiration or wisdom, he can actually just say, hey, Emerson, what do you reckon here? Hey, Epictetus, what do you think here? And I think that's really cool. So I think that was just a wonderful idea, and that whole concept that Brian has mentioned in the past of the board of directors, I think, is really great. So that was step number 3, or big idea for me, number 3, what I can be. Moving on to big idea number 4 is step forward into growth, not back into safety. Another Maslow concept. And that whole idea of our infinite potential lies on the other side of our comfort zone. I know that sometimes we just feel like we're so close to something that could be massive, but that fear or uncertainty or self-doubt just kind of sets in and sort of holds us back. But, we just don't know when we're just one step away, one idea away, one action away from something that actually is just going to unleash the entire best. Stepping forward into growth. Idea number 2, obstacles make me stronger. And in Nietzsche's words, praise be what hardens. And so that, I think, is such an important concept of obstacles in life, right from when we were babies. My goodness, everything was an obstacle. And those obstacles are what make us physically stronger and socially stronger, mentally stronger, every aspect in our lives stronger. And so just kind of remembering that whatever seems to be the blockage is the way, potentially. And then to ask my daimon is, so in order to step forward to growth, I think sometimes we get so caught up in being, taking on action. So sometimes we need to just step back and be a little quiet and just ask the daimon and say, what do you think, daimon? Similar to asking the board of directors, but a little bit different. And be sure to listen for the whisper, because I know my daimon is really quiet and it whispers very succinctly. And if I'm not sort of being totally present, I'll miss it. And so I think listening and acting upon the wisdom of the daimon in its whisper is a great way to step forward into growth. So moving on to big idea number 5 is finish what I start. This for me has been a really big concept. I don't even know whether it came from anywhere, but what I realized in working on my sleep is that I realized that open loops definitely led to more disturbed sleep. And so it comes from the Zeigarnik effect, which I first read about in Roy Baumeister's Willpower book quite some years ago. And so, but realizing from an experiential point of view, that's what made this one particularly important for me, is finishing what I start. And so the Zeigarnik effect is certainly very important. It also made me realize that by actually just putting some of those concepts of the Zeigarnik effect, my open loops, onto paper, certainly sort of dropped the level of, oh, I've got to remember this, I've got to remember this, down. So just popping ideas down on paper and somewhere documented so that they're not loose and running around in my head as well as elsewhere. This second part, for finish what I start, is something that I just loved the term as first time I heard it. So anti-arambashura. I don't know how to quite pronounce it, but that's how I hear it. And so being heroes at the end. So I feel like for me that getting started, I can do generally. Yeah, sometimes I do procrastinate a lot, but it's the finishing things. Like I will get quite a way through, but it's that ability to sort of see things through. Now, big things I'll always get done. And, but it's the leaving things quite often to the last minute that I think can be the challenge for me. But there is, if looking at my list of open loops, those open projects that I have, it's huge, quite significant. And so being able to intentionally choose projects to finish up and close, I think is going to be great. And so I love that term that, the Arambashura is being a hero in the start, but it's, I think for me, it's seeing things through. It's seeing things through to completion is just massive. So that finish what I start rather than having lots of little things that are unfinished. I think for me, the third key point within finish what I start is the how to do this. And I liked the saying that I think Brian got it from his Vipassana retreat, which was diligently, patiently, persistently. And then I think in one of the subsequent lessons, there was the concept about do it with dignity and do it again. And so for me, the diligently, patiently, persistently, do it with dignity and do it again are all qualities that are going to help finish what I start. So that was big idea number 5. Big idea number 6 is the right why. So this came from Michelle Seeger's No Sweat, and I really liked that lovely fine distinction, because people often say to you, what's your why? Why do you want to do this? And I really liked her research that really made a great distinction between whys that work and essentially whys that are a whole lot less effective. And so for me, understanding that motivation is actually a result of putting the right why in place, and understanding it's not really the driver of it. It can be, but it's the result of getting other things in place first. So the second point within the right why is around the root of sustainable motivation. So being able to choose any kind of behavior change, and obviously her research is focused a lot more on getting people healthy, physically active, a lot more movement side of things, is the root of sustainable motivation lies in the neuroscience of immediate rewards. And I really liked how she linked it back to the evolutionary side of things, that behavior was motivated by a sense of immediate rewards, because that was just how life back then really was. And so if we can choose more effective whys that motivate us, and in my case, a lot of my clients, to focus on what's the why that will give them an immediate reward rather than some long off distant why that, doesn't necessarily give them that hit. So they need the immediate why that's going to help them take the action now. And then that leads to the third point within this area, which is link the behavior and the why to personally relevant positive experiences that will generate feeling good right now. So I think that's really important to make sure it's personally relevant to the person, such as they want to feel good or they want to have more energy, or so that they'll have less stress during their day. So those kind of things that are going to definitely be more beneficial for them, in order to take the action, take that healthy behavior, go for their walk, take time with their family, to do that now when they can think of a more rewarding behavior that will give them that feel-good factor now. So that is the right why with Michelle Seeger. Protocol is primary is big idea number 7. Looking on that, number 7. So protocol is primary. Big one for that, the first point was masterpiece days. And for me, the key thing about the masterpiece days, certainly from my perspective, was looking at including floors and ceilings for the key activities, and the floor being probably the most important part. And so my masterpiece day is very much a work in progress, as my days seem to be different each day. So, but for me, that concept of having the floors was really awesome, and I really liked it. Second part to big idea number 7 being the protocol is primary. The second key idea is around the bookend my day, which is focusing on how I want my day to start and how I want it to finish. So the sunsets at the end of the day, but also those movement and meditation aspects in the morning, really key for me. Algorithms, big idea number 3 within big idea number 7, is the algorithms. Obviously there's the Whoop side of things, and very much within Whoop is the if-then plans. I think I heard Brian talk about Gabrielle Oettingen's work years ago, but I'd first heard of her work in Martin Seligman's book, Learned Optimism, I think it is, which he wrote many years ago, and she was one of his grad students, I believe, and so that's where I first came across some of her work. I believe I've got that right. Anyway, I did hear Brian a number of years ago do the PN on her book, Rethinking Positive Thinking. So I got the book back then, and so really learned about her husband's work, Peter Gollwitzer, on the if-then implementation planning. And so the whole idea then of taking it into some of the other terminology that people use in terms of the algorithms, in terms of activating our ancient intelligence in order to put our habits on autopilot, I think was just really great, and really just helped to focus, looking at, well, where can I make better algorithms? So that's been terrific. So thank you. Moving on to big idea number 8, which is win. So the primary win for me, so I've got 3 wins. The primary win for me is around what's important now, is asking that question throughout the day, is thinking about, what is important now? What's important right now for me to do? This or that? What's the choice? What choice am I making in this present moment to make better use of the time that I have to pursue the goals I want and to close that gap and to be the person who I want to be? Second win within big idea number 8 is win or learn. That growth mindset, which obviously I'm aware of as a psychologist, but the win or learn framework in terms of looking at how we look at failures, that failure is just the first attempt in learning. And I really like that aspect of thinking of fail as just first attempt in learning. And so that concept of turning around, looking at how I might previously have looked at failures, or how it might have made me hesitate from making a first attempt, and to think, the good old Thomas Edison light bulb example is always such a classic to think of. He made supposedly close to 1,000 attempts before he got the light bulb to work. And so why would we think we can make things work on the first go? So I really like that whole idea of turning it around to make it win or learn. So that's been wonderful. And the third part of the win is wins, in terms of let's celebrate the wins that we have to lock in the goodness. So for me, big celebration in terms of the way I jumped across that finish line with Spartan, in terms of, that was just super exciting. There's definitely some context particularly around why it was exciting, because a few years ago my wrist was particularly in a bad way, and so to even think that I had a wrist that works is actually pretty phenomenal. And so to be able to do all those things was particularly exciting. So whatever the wins are, is finding a way to celebrate them in the moment, that intense, immediate kind of celebration, in order to lock in that feel-good fact. So again, that immediate reward that the brain gets by celebrating. So that's a terrific part for me, is to actually be okay to celebrate. And big idea number 9 is oscillate with the natural rhythms of our body and with life in general. So the 3 main rhythms we've got are the circadian, the ultradian, and the micradian. Thank you to Brian for the 3rd term. And so the circadian rhythms, I think the key thing for that is it made me really focus on looking at my sleep a lot more, and the shutdown, I guess as a whole package, the shutdown complete. So not allowing work to just kind of bleed into the rest of my day. Still does sometimes, but nonetheless, is that shutdown complete, the eating sunset, which I've probably relatively more recently been a lot more conscious of doing, and then the digital sunset. So I think those 3 things together, and then being much more intentional about getting to bed more consistently, and where possible earlier, in order to wake up earlier, which has been something really important. The second point is the ultradian rhythm. So those 90-minute kind of cycles that are really helpful from a work point of view, is the being 100% on with work and then 100% off, and taking those little dips in the way we work in order to make the most of the time that we have. So I really like that concept, and being able to play with that a little bit more. And then the micradian rhythms, in terms of having those little tiny rhythms, and I know Brian really makes a point of focus on the 1,000 seconds in order to, has his timer and gets up and does a movement. So I have a little chin-up bar outside my office. Sometimes I'm just getting up and going for a stand, but sometimes I will make it as a point as I pass through the doorway to do the chin-ups that way. But in whatever way it is, and I've actually been really great. Well, I feel pleased now, because probably only in the last week or so, I don't know, but maybe a few weeks, but I've started extending it definitely in the last 2 weeks, is incorporating the micradian rhythms. Might not have used that term, but little movement breaks in my client session. So I was like, yep, let's get up. We've been sitting for a bit of a while. Let's pop some movement in here. And so I've been really pleasantly surprised. I have not had one person say no. So that's been really good. So people have actually quite embraced that, which is terrific. And that's all to counteract the effects that we often do sit for too long. So that's the oscillation, moving with the natural rhythms of the body, which I've really enjoyed. And the final of my top 10 big ideas is Nietzsche's "There is no the way." And so the quote, "This is my way, where is yours? Thus I answered those who asked me the way, for the way that does not exist." And so instead of trying to be the best version of someone else, try instead to be the best version of you, or in my case, be the best version of me, because there is no the way, there is no anyone else other than ourselves. So in terms of, rather than trying to be a great copy of someone else, it's just be 100% truly, authentically ourselves, and being in integrity with that. And I think connecting with that will certainly promote a way of being that there is no the way. So trying to find my own way. So just like, I guess, all the different top 10s are very, very different to each other, what stood out for different people. And so Nietzsche's quote, and probably other quotes, there have been a number that have stood out for me. It really, listening to "Thus Spoke Zarathustra" really resonated with me. It was like, God, when I heard those words, I was like, that was just like liberating. And it was quite, it really had quite a profound effect on me. You know, put it out, and I've got it on little quotes around my office now. And, it is something that I just keep coming back to. And it's also a work in progress to actually put into action. So the quote, "Rather than trying to be an impersonator of others, is being one's best self." And I think perhaps that's maybe where the whole imposter syndrome comes from. So many people really are trying to be someone else rather than to be themselves, and to come up with their own way rather than copying and replicating what someone else has done and what might have worked for them. And it's great to use that as a starting point, but slavishly trying to do what someone else has done maybe isn't the way. So I think, again, that was liberating in some ways, removing constraints in terms of thinking about how things should be, is just embracing perhaps a way that is my way, going back to the very first point about start with the end in mind, and being creative before reactive. So really trying to put some time down to, well, how do I want this to be? And the third point around "there is no the way" is the only way to find out how my way will be is to be in action. And so I guess this came through pretty clearly through my coaching with Brian, and I think Michael might have touched upon it as well. And so that's actually been really pretty powerful, that I'll find out as I take the step. I don't need to know the whole pathway, but just by taking a step, the next step becomes clearer. And, if I have to change things, it's all just first attempt in learning. It's all a learning experiment. And so taking on the learner's mindset, all the way to go. So the final part for me was big idea number 11. And it was a question that I had that I got to explore with Brian in the coaching, which was around bringing back the boon. Joseph Campbell's concept as part of the hero's journey is that the hero's journey is not complete until we bring back the boon. And so I guess that's the closing the loop is the first part of that. So and I think, by doing this video for me is part of the closing the loop of my first year in optimized coach training. Second part about bringing back the boon is to think that it's really about being of service to the world. So by keeping it all to myself, keeping these great learnings, whether it's from this experience, whether it's from other experiences that I have yet to bring back the boon to the world, is instead of taking the focus on just me, is to say, how many other people might benefit from this particular sharing, my particular take on sharing these experiences with people. So focusing on that being of service to others. And then the third and final part to bringing back the boon is to remind myself that I am the boon. There is no other Patrea O'Donoghue. And so I have a unique take on everything. My experiences are unique, or my collection of experiences are unique, and therefore my take on them is unique. And so it's really kind of weird and also liberating in a way to kind of embrace the fact that I am the boon. There are many other ideas I could pop into my top 10 ideas, but they were the ones that I guess have really stood out for me. So just recapping my top 10 again with my lovely acronym of Spartans complete with success from rigorous process with optimized thinking. So S for Spartan was start with the end in mind, complete. So they close the gap between who they are capable of being and who they're actually being. With the W, Champions Complete with, is what I can be. Complete with success is step forward into growth, not back into safety. From, step forward into growth. From, rigorous, is finish what I start. So those open loops lead to worse sleep in my case, or worse, more worrying, rumination. So closing those loops definitely leads to a better night's sleep for me, that's for sure. Focusing on the right why. That was a really lovely distinction from Michelle Seeger that I really appreciated. The P is the protocol, focusing on the protocol. So Spartans complete with success following rigorous process. So process is primary, protocol is primary. So that emphasis on really having a clear protocol so that we can put those non-conscious processes of our brain to work so that we can work on autopilot a whole lot more. And then we have so the wins, 3 types of wins. What's important now, win or learn, and celebrating the wins that we have, which is just a cool one for me. And then 9 is oscillating with the natural rhythms of our life. Big idea number 10, Nietzsche's There Is No The Way. Fabulous, loved it. And my bonus idea, big idea number 11, Bring Back the Boon, Joseph Campbell. So absolutely love this course. I have had many, many benefits that have come through as a part of being a part of Optimize. And, you know, some of those have definitely included improved sleep, training for Spartan, go Spartan. Training for Spartan has made me step up the way I have trained, to train harder, train in a different way, so which I actually really like. I like the feeling of getting fitter, and I like that I'm getting toner, more toned and leaner, and I feel like I'm looking stronger as well, which is great because I used to do a lot of stuff that made me look that way. And so, you know, with an injury a few years ago, kind of thing got, you know, a little bit waylaid. So this training for Spartan has definitely made me step up my training for working on my upper body strength. Still got a long way to go, but that's okay. I've definitely made massive improvements. I've cut pretty much, I wouldn't say totally 100% out, but I'm way cut out the flour. Cut out sugar quite a number of years ago after reading a book called Sweet Poison. But cutting back on and I wasn't big into some of those processed oils, but I've definitely cut back on the flour, and I think that's contributed to sort of shrinking certain areas of my body, namely the belly. So that was a good thing. So whilst my weight hasn't necessarily changed a lot, I'm probably only maybe a couple of kilograms down. I'm definitely feeling I'm a lot leaner, which is terrific. I'm definitely I've made progress in the deep work area, and but yeah, there's probably a number of other benefits. I don't have them all listed here with me, but there have been a lot of benefits, and I've really enjoyed actually embracing a lot of the ancient wisdom side of things. So hearing a lot more about the Stoicism and the Stoics philosophy and the Stoics' influence on a lot of modern day psychology, and really just seriously hearing how much there's a key driver of that Stoic philosophy into modern psychology, and through various, you're following the rabbit hole from one book to another, and so I've certainly just very recently, like yesterday, come across another one that is a textbook that I'm really looking forward to hearing about. So the introduction to so many great luminaries has been fabulous. Met and made friends across the virtual support that this program has provided has been really great. The accountability provided by putting things up on the Oasis, for me, I know it was a choice, but to put my Carpe Diem journal there helped me stay accountable. It's the tracking of things has definitely, so habit tracking has definitely helped see progress in areas, and has definitely helped with the consistency of certain behaviours. So I'm certainly pretty stoked with being a part of this program, and certainly looking forward to my second year. So thank you so much to Brian, Michael, Calman, Patrick, Yana, everyone in the team, and many of the others whose names I haven't mentioned, and if I've forgotten someone who's helped me out, I apologise. But thank you very much to the various buddies I've had virtually who I've not spoken to, and those who I have and had some great longer relationship time with. My buddy who supported and was there on Spartan Day with me here in the Gold Coast. Awesome. So thank you. Love it. Highly recommend it. Thank you so much. All right. Cheers. That's my top 10, plus a wrap up of some of my key benefits. Thank you. Bye.